PNR Networks is a member of Patreon. Show your love for our shows by joining our ongoing fundraising campaign and get some fantastic perks in return. Check it out and become a Patreon sponsor. You can sign up at patreon.com, patreon.com/PNR Networks. And thanks for your support.
She just goes a little mad sometimes.
Do you ever feel like you're normal and the rest of the world has lost its collective mind?
Put your helmet on. We'll be reaching speeds of 3.
Do you find people saying this to you a lot?
Are you totally deranged?
Are you looking for a looking glass to pass through?
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Or looking for a rabbit hole to fall down?
Who could think of a better punishment, really? Everything's the same here, it's just a little worse.
Guess what?
Life's a bitch. Now so am I.
You found it. Welcome to Platinum Rose's Garden.
Hello, my darlings. This is Platinum Rose Lady welcoming you to Platinum Rose's Garden on Saturday, March 9th, 2019. Well, here we are in the month of March, beginning of March, which came in like a snow leopard, I guess would be the best way to put it. We had a little kind of mini snowstorm on Monday. That was less than fun. Some places got hit with not as much snow. We got about 15 inches of snow. It was just kind of like, okay, this is a little bit crazy. And so that was the start of the week. And the rest of the week's been kind of like, it's been, okay, it's temperate. Oh my gosh, it's freezing. Okay, it's temperate again, sort of. You know, there's a saying in New England, if you don't like the weather, wait 2 minutes, it'll change. This is not a joke. I'd also like to hope everybody had a good week. I hope everybody's week was good. I would like to bring up something that I've mentioned this before, and if you want to fast forward through this part of the show, it's cool. I don't mind. I've mentioned before being a person of faith. I am Roman Catholic, and this week was the beginning of Lent, kicking off with Ash Wednesday. And I would just like to bring up to people out there who might have friends who are Catholic and stuff like that, if your friend is kind of a little short-tempered for the next 40 days, kind of cut him a little slack, you know, just not a lot. I mean, if somebody's really being a jerk to you, definitely call them out and say, hey, you're being a jerk. But if somebody you know is a little bit less perky than they usually are, during Lent, Catholics are supposed to try and give up something that they do a lot, whether it's something like, you know, coffee or chocolate or whatever. And sometimes you get a little testy. So if you know somebody who's a Catholic and they're a little bit, you know, call them, like I said, call them out if they're being super rude. But if you know they're being like, you know, oh gosh, I know you're having a tough time because you gave up coffee for Lent or something like that, you know, give them a hug or something like that and try and be supportive and stuff like that. Because I gotta tell you guys, sometimes if you pick something that you're like, wow, I needed this a lot more than I thought I did. And then you go, whoops, this is not a question of take backsies. There's no really take backsies with this. Because for one thing, I gave up biting my nails. Now, Lent is not like a birthday wish. You can say what you're giving up because it's not like it's not like a birthday wish where if you say it, it won't come true. I decided this year I was going to be like, I'm going to really, really try and exercise some willpower and stuff like that. Calm down. I'm not giving up chocolate. I'm not stupid. I would be completely unbearable if I did that. No, I decided that I was going to give up biting my nails and picking at my nails, which is, I do that and it's a really bad habit and I'm trying to stop myself. And I also decided I'm going to try and stop cursing. And wow, is this harder than I thought it would be. I am not joking around. This is seriously a lot more difficult than I thought it would be. And I'm not perfect. I've caught myself a few times. But, you know, it's like, oh my gosh, this is so much harder than I thought it would be. Because I'm like thinking to myself, or I'm talking to somebody and I'm like, I have to kind of pull myself back from, dropping the F-bomb or saying something naughty. And I'm like, I'm like, okay, this was a lot harder than I thought it would be. So this is a true exercise of my willpower. I should really stock up on some Prozac or some Jack Daniels or something. I don't know. Speaking of partying and such, we definitely have to give it up to our own lovely Jensen Ackles, who was the king, who was picked as King Bacchus for one of the floats down in Mardi Gras this past week. The New Orleans crew at the Mardi Gras Carnival. And I have to say, Jensen was rocking the outfit. Every year they pick a celebrity to be the King of Bacchus or King Bacchus. I'm not really sure which it is. But I've seen pictures from him, posed pictures and of him on the float and stuff like that. And I have to say, Jensen, you looked great, buddy. You looked absolutely regal up there and very dashing. And also we have some other awesome, super cool news. Thanks to SuperWiki for posting this, because I hadn't heard about this. Jensen is going to be doing some more voice work, which is completely excellent. He is going to be doing some voice work for DC Comics in the animated film The Long Halloween, which is really awesome. I'm so super excited. I don't know who he's playing. I don't know who he's voicing. But again, thanks to SuperWiki for pointing that out to us. Jensen had also brought that up at a con back in 2018. I thought Jensen was one of the best parts of Batman Under the Red Hood, which was a super awesome animated film to begin with. Really great film. One of the animated films that I actually own. And I really, really loved it. And his work as Jason Todd / the Red Hood is really freaking amazing there. See what I mean? See what I did there? It's so cool. If you've never checked out Batman Under the Red Hood, why the heck not? Go watch it. Go find it. Check it out, because it's amazing. But again, once again, seriously, Jensen, you look so dashing in your kingly outfit and so regal and fantastic. So, congrats to him, obviously. And speaking of, congrats and kudos, and I can't even pile as much awesomeness on this. If you have not seen Captain Marvel yet, oh my frog, go see this movie. It is amazing. I have to be perfectly honest. I mean, I am a comic person, but Captain Marvel's not one of the characters that I really followed very much. And when I say Captain Marvel, I mean the Marvel Captain Marvel, not the DC Captain Marvel, who is now Shazam, and I've now given myself a headache. Ow. Sorry. But I'd seen, the trailers and things, and I was really kind of like, I'm not feeling this. Not feeling this movie. And then we went to see it last night, and oh my frog, is this movie amazing. So amazing. So freaking amazing. And it also really cracks me up that there's so many people online being so negative about this film. And surprise, a lot of them are guys. Now, I realize some people are going, oh no, here it comes, here she goes, she's gonna go on this bashing on men thing because all men are scumbags except for her guy and Jared and Jensen and Misha. Pretty much. No, I wouldn't say that. There's a lot of really cool guys and decent people out there. But it just amazes me how many men are so blatantly intimidated by the idea of a movie with a powerful female lead who by the end of the movie is not like hooked up with some guy. And it just cracks me up that these men are so intimidated. I mean, it would be sad except for the fact that I find these people seriously annoying. So, moving forward, let's get to what everybody came for. I'm rabbiting on here. Sorry about that. I'm just so excited about Captain Marvel. It was such a great movie. So let's get to this week's Supernatural episode recap.
Carry on my wayward
Season 14, Episode 14 of Supernatural, Oroboros. We begin with the then portion of the show, the then dealing with Michael, who is currently trapped inside Dean's head, and Dean's plan that if he cannot keep Michael contained inside his head to save the Earth, again, that Dean is going to put himself in what is called a Malak box, which is a box that is supposed to be able to hold anything, and anything includes an archangel. So Dean will basically entomb himself in this box, which will then be chucked into the ocean, where he will be trapped for all eternity with Michael. This, needless to say, is a terrible idea. I mean, I understand it's Dean and he's being incredibly brave, but of course Sam is all like, what? And we saw the scene where he punched his brother and then hugged him, because men. Sorry. And we also had in the then dealing with Jack and how Jack's body was breaking down because Lucifer stole his grace. Thanks, Dad. And how, Jack was saved by this magic that was performed by Lily Sunder, but the problem was that this magic and Jack coming back to life was at the cost of part of his soul. That whenever he uses his powers, he's burning off a little bit of his soul, which is obviously a bad thing. And now we are at Now. And Now is a house in New Mexico where we see a person preparing a meal. It's a young man who's in a kitchen with a snake, because reasons, preparing a meal. As it turns out, the meal is made up of a corpse. He's cooking regular food and all that, and he also has a man's dead body lying on the island in the kitchen and pulling out bits and pieces of him to eat. So we're 3 minutes into this episode, and I'm already about to puke all over the carpet. This is boding well. He takes out one of the body's eyeballs and then pops it in his mouth. Did I mention almost throwing up? And his eyes change to this very green color, and they're almost more like the eyes of a snake. And we see what he's seeing in this green tint, and what he's seeing is Sam and Dean coming into the house with their guns drawn. And he doesn't seem to be pretty upset about this. He just picks up his snake and takes out the guy's other eye to take with him to eat later. And we get the opening credits, and I'm seriously trying not to hurl all over the living room floor, because side rant, sorry, little side rant here. I can deal with a lot of stuff. Being a horror fan for as many years as I have been, which we won't go into how many years that is, I've seen a lot of pretty squishy stuff, blood, intestines, guts, tendons, what have you, and stuff like that. And for the most part, I can deal with all of that, but there is one thing that I cannot deal with, and this show had to go there in this episode over and over and over again. Does anybody want to guess what the one thing is? If you guessed eye stuff, give yourself a cookie, because you're right. I cannot deal with stuff with people's eyes, people getting hit in the eye, people having their eyes ripped out of their head, I can't, that's my kryptonite, that's my big thing that I can't deal with, and I'm like, oh gosh, this episode's gonna be really, really difficult. I mean, it wasn't the worst eye removal I've seen much worse. The scene in Kill Bill comes to mind. Ugh. But anyway, so I'm like, well, we're gonna have to keep dealing with this all through the episode, I know. And we get past the opening credits, and we see what the guys saw. We see the door opening up and Sam and Dean coming in, guns drawn and everything like that, and they're there with Castiel and Jack and Rowena. As it turns out, they've been hunting this creature for a little while. Dean's of the impression that it might be a witch, and Rowena's all like, no, it's not, you always blaming witches, and Dean's like, because it's usually witches' fault, that kind of deal. She used a tracking spell for them, but the problem is that the spell did work because they found the guy, but the guy got the jump on them and left. So they've been chasing this monster apparently for weeks, and while they're looking around and looking at all of the, the paraphernalia that this thing left behind, including a snake skin on the floor, which Jack picked up because he noticed it, clever boy. Jack coughs, and when he coughs, everybody kind of looks at him like something's wrong, which he plays off that there was pepper in the food he was leaning over, and not to like stare at him. He's like, I'm not dying, using that teenage voice that, I'm like, well, they grow up so fast, don't they? Oh goody, we've hit the nobody understands me door slamming phase. I'm like, great, so you're gonna have a Nephilium hanging out at Hot Topic. Wonderful. The fact that the body has black lips is something that catches Rowena's attention. And Rowena and Sam, we cut to the motel they're staying in, and we see Rowena and Sam sitting there at a table with a whole bunch of books. And she's asking Sam questions about Jack and about Dean, and Sam's trying to avoid answering said questions. Because he knows that once he tells Rowena, yeah, Jack's burning off part of his soul if he uses his powers, and yeah, Dean's having a problem keeping Michael in tow, things are not going to go very well, because Rowena's not the type of person to hold her tongue when she gets upset. We see Castiel and Dean in a diner, and Castiel, needless to say, is extremely worried about Dean, because Dean has an archangel trapped in his head that wants out, like, now. And Dean actually fesses up to Cass, saying how he's not really fine, that he is, he's not sleeping very much because he's constantly having to keep Michael at bay, and Michael's always pounding at the inside of his brain trying to get out. While all this is going on, Jack is in the restroom, and we see him washing his hands like a good boy. But the thing is, he starts to cough, and he winds up coughing up blood. And I'm sitting there going, oh no, not again, and tears start pricking at the back of my eyes, and I'm like, no! Jack uses his powers to heal himself from whatever, from what he's dealing with, and we know that that's not a good thing, because he's burning away part of his soul when he does that. Okay, another side note. I have to bring this up because, and I've brought this up before, but since the character of Jack has been brought into the show, which I am absolutely totally fine with, BTW, I love Jack. I think Jack is a wonderful character, and Alexander is amazing. I adore him. I think he's brought so much to the show, but I have to bring up one thing. Jack has stirred something inside of me that I didn't even realize I had, and that was an actual maternal instinct. I never realized that I had a maternal instinct, and I have to be completely honest, it's terrifying. I don't know how mothers go through this every single solitary day. It's a terrifying feeling, being that frightened that someone that you care about is going to be injured. It's horrible. How do mothers put up with this? No wonder they made Mother's Day. My gosh. Just side note over, moving forward. Back at the table, Dean's talking with Cass still, and they're talking about that if Michael keeps pounding at, Dean's brain, there is a chance that he's going to be able to escape. And if that happens, Dean says they're going to have to go through with his plan B, this whole put Dean in the Malak box and chuck Dean into the Marianas Trench, which, hands up, who thinks that's a good idea? Yeah, I didn't think so. And Castiel's not really happy with this idea either, and is completely like, we will find a way to fix this and fix you. Jack comes back to the table, and they start talking about the case again, and Castiel is not really sure what they're dealing with, but he is of the opinion what they're dealing with isn't a monster per se. He thinks it's some kind of a human, because what they've been dealing with, they've obviously been dealing with multiple cases of dead men in the Southwest, and there's almost a ritualistic feel to these killings. Dean gets a phone call from Sam, and what Sam and Rowena have found out is that what they're dealing with is a Gorgon. And a Gorgon, as it turns out in the supernatural universe anyway, is a demigod that eats humans. And it can see the future and see the fates of other people by eating human eyes. They eat like a snake eats, in the respect that they don't eat for a while and then they gorge themselves, and they think that this being has been responsible for up to 17 deaths as it's making its way along the American Southwest. Ugh. Now, Dean brings up Clash of the Titans. He's all excited as Rowena dismisses that kind of stuff because she says that the myths about the Gorgons have been blown out of proportion, since the ancient Greece. And that's why people think Gorgons are creatures that have snakes for hair and can turn people to stone with their look. As it turns out, that's not what Gorgons actually can do. They do have a venom that if they kiss someone with the venom, if they put their lips to someone, they will paralyze them almost instantaneously. And when I say paralyzed, that doesn't mean numb. Paralyzed and numb are not the same thing. So when this person is paralyzed as the Gorgon is vivisecting them, i.e. cutting them up while they're still alive, the person is still feeling all of this. Yuck. This is really, really freaking gross. Also, at one point in the episode, Dean brings up, because they find out that the way to kill a Gorgon, they can only be killed by having their head chopped off with a blade made of silver. And Dean brings up that when they cut the Gorgon's head off, won't that create more monsters? That's actually out of Greek mythology. In the Greek mythology, when the most famous Gorgon, Medusa, there were actually 3 sisters that were best known as being Gorgons. The main one being Medusa. She had her head chopped off by Perseus. And when he killed her, the winged stallion Pegasus was born from her body. It jumped out of her decapitated form. This is what happens when Greek mythology nerds watch Supernatural. Dean also mentions Clash of the Titans. He doesn't mention which version of Clash of the Titans he's talking about. The one that came out in the 80s or the one that came out in the 2000s. Personally, I've seen both of them. The one that came out in the 80s, while it is campy as heck, is way better than the one that came out in the 2000s. I don't care if Mads Mikkelsen was in the one that came out in the 2000s in a co-starring role. It still stinks compared to the original one. Just not as good at all. So we see the Gorgon, whose name we find out is Noah. Okay. He is at a truck stop and winds up talking a trucker into giving him, he says he'll do anything for a ride and some food. Oh boy. The trucker falls for this, brings him in his cab. The guy kind of looks around like, I don't want anybody to see that I'm doing this on the down low. And Noah kisses him and paralyzes him with the kiss and is still talking to him and explaining that the numbing agent actually takes a while. So the guy can feel everything that's about to happen to him. And that includes having his eyeball taken out, which Noah then eats. And I'm, again, trying not to vomit all over the carpet. We come back and it's daytime. The cops are there, crime scene, and Dean and Sam and Cass are there also saying that they're feds, they never ask for Cass's name, which I was like, I don't know what he's gonna say, but, Dean and Sam give their names as, Agents Page and Jones, Led Zeppelin joke there. The cop tries to be a little bit flip, but he's doing it because he's nervous, and Castiel reads him the riot act in that low key Castiel way that he has, that he could talk to me like that and I'd be, oh yes, Daddy, I've been bad. that was probably more than you guys needed to know about me and my kinks, but we don't kink shame here on Platinum Rose's Garden. Anyway, moving forward, the thing is, there's more at this crime scene than just a dead guy who has no eyeballs. Ugh. There's also a note that is addressed to Dean, because that's not unnerving. Ugh. As it turns out, the note is a threat to Dean from Noah. The thing is, the note brings up Dean, it brings up Sam, the tall one, or the tall guy, and it also brings up Rowena, which Rowena is really less than happy that she's in a note written by a flesh-eating monster. But the thing is, he doesn't bring up Castiel, and he doesn't bring up Jack. So apparently, while this creature can see humans and it can see witches, although witches are humans, but magically modified, you guys all know that, they can't see angels, or half angels in Jack's case, which is apparently, a good thing. It obviously gives Team Free Will a bit of a leg up. So they're going to go after him using Jack and Cass, but they're going to need some anti-venom as well, just to make sure that nobody gets, paralyzed. And anti-venom, as it turns out, is a controlled substance, because why? I'm sorry, I didn't know that, and I'm still trying to process why anti-venom would be a controlled substance. Could somebody explain that to me? I'm totally freaked. So they have to get some anti-venom, and in order to do that, we have a bit of subterfuge and some very nice acting on the part of Sam and Rowena, who go into a animal hospital carrying a puppy, which I'm at first like, where did oh no. And they're trying to frantically explain to the lady behind the counter that they think the puppy's been poisoned, that it ate something it shouldn't have. Sam and Rowena are taking the part of a bickering couple, and it was actually quite funny. I mean, we've seen Sam try to act in The French Mistake, and that was, very much grade school production acting on Sam's part, but when he really tries, he really does a good job. And Rowena, seriously, thumbs up. Kudos to you. So they give the lady the puppy, who they say his name is Jack. Very cute, adorable, stupidly cute, adorable puppy, by the way. Sweet little dog. Brussels Griffon, I believe. Again, thanks to SuperWiki. All I saw was puppy, and I was like, puppy! I'm like that, I admit it. I'm complete. You show me a puppy, I turn into a 5-year-old girl. I'm just, I can't help it. The lady brings the vet brings the puppy in the back, and, takes his temperature, and tells the puppy that she's going to go get his parents have to fill out some forms. Once she leaves, all of a sudden the puppy is Jack. So it was a transformation spell that Rowena cast. I will not bring up, Jack as a puppy, because, Jack is adorable and the puppy was adorable, but Jack on his hands and knees like that, bad Kim, no cookie. So Jack winds up grabbing the anti-venom and splitting, which the vet comes in to take care of the dog, and there's no dog. The people outside are gone. So everybody, it's kind of a confusing situation. If she's smart, she'll just write off the whole thing as her blood sugar was low or something. They get outside, and, Jack brings up that he had to have his temperature taken, and he's not real happy about it. And he gets in the car, and Rowena and Sam have a talk outside the car, with Rowena being really unhappy about the fact that when she cast the spell on Jack, she felt something else, some other kind of magic inside of him that she describes as volatile, and also mentions that it's stitched to him, comparing it to a parasite. And she does bring up that she's worried, so she says, so I'll ask you again, what did you do? And Sam says that Jack's being careful, they're being careful, and she's like, fine, don't tell me. But using dangerous, mysterious magic, regardless of the cost, that's a very on-brand me thing to do. And Sam, trying to write it off, is like, well, thank you. And he kind of has this smirk on his face. I'm like, you sassy boy. And Rowena she's, it's Rowena, so you don't out-sass Rowena. That's not happening. And she's like, of course, Samuel. Until very recently, I was the villain. And, very much upturn of the head, wounded pride. I love Ruth Connell. I do love her, and I'm sorry if I mangled her accent. I'm trying my best. My Scottish accent comes and goes a little bit when I try it. I admit that. But you have to be, now I'm really concerned, because if Rowena's concerned, that means that things could go horribly sideways very, very quickly. We see Noah in another home, taunting his next meal, a man, an elderly gentleman, he looks like, maybe in the 60s or so, tied to a chair. And I'm like, oh, good grief. We've got a Bond villain on our hands, kids. He's one of these types that likes to talk. Noah's a talker. He's, like I said, he's what I refer to as a Bond villain. Or, apparently went to the Victor Von Doom school of bad guys, because he loves to hear himself chat. As he explains, being a Gorgon is a lonely existence because, you do eat people, so you really can't hang around very much, because people are going to go, hey, wasn't Phil with that guy before Phil disappeared? As it turns out, when the guy asks him if he only preys on men, Noah actually tells him that no, he doesn't. He actually does eat women too. That didn't come out the way I wanted it to, but y'all get the general drift. The thing is, it's harder to catch women alone now because women are more cautious, which Noah's actually like good for them, and that all this talk about misogynistic oppression and stuff. And Noah's talking to his victim and also talking to his pet snake Felix, because apparently Noah also went to the Dr. Evil school of bad guys, but instead of a hairless cat like Mr. Bigglesworth, Noah carries around a snake named Felix. I couldn't tell what kind of snake Felix is. He might be a corn snake or possibly a coral snake. I don't know. Or a king snake. I'm hoping it's not a coral snake, because those are poisonous. Might be a king snake though, or maybe a rat snake. I wasn't really sure. We see Maggie talking with Sam on the phone, and that's where she mentions the whole thing about Gorgons only being able to be killed by decapitation via a silver blade. Sam asks how things are at the bunker, and she says that everything's fine so far. Jack and Castiel get into the house and manage to rescue the captive person from Noah. But as they're trying to, kill Noah and get out of there, Noah, again, Victor Von Doom's school of bad guy, starts telling a story to Jack. It's very weird. He has almost this snake-like power to hold someone's attention as he tells this story about a chicken and a snake, which, as it turns out, is an African folktale. The chicken and the snake story is about a snake that keeps stealing a chicken's eggs. And the end of the story is about the last egg that was left, where the snake steals the egg, but instead of being able to crush the egg inside its rib cage or inside its throat, as snakes do when they eat eggs, the snake winds up choking to death because the chicken sacrificed her last egg. She hard-boiled it so that the snake would choke on it and die. Noah's whole point to this, besides stalling, is asking Jack, "Are you the chicken, or are you the snake?" And that's, he's really confused by that, and I don't blame him. A fight ensues, and during which Castiel winds up being kissed on the cheek by Noah, and I was like, well, that's not gonna work. He's an angel. He's on the floor. Oh, crud. That worked. I gotta be perfectly honest, I was completely surprised that worked. And then Noah attacks Jack and knocks him to the ground. Sam and Dean wind up rushing in and attack, but Noah gets the upper hand very quickly because, as it turns out, Gorgons are stronger than humans. That would have been nice to know. And he winds up bashing Dean's head hard into the wall several times. And Noah winds up beating Sam up and goes to leave. And as he's turning and going down a corridor, all of a sudden a blade slashes out from one of the side doors, and it's Jack. And Jack winds up decapitating Noah. Threat over there. Jack runs back to Castiel and gives him the anti-venom, but it's not working. So Jack winds up using some of his power and burning off more of his soul to heal Cass. Sam, needless to say, is crouched over Dean and trying to help him. Dean is not waking up and has blood trickling down the side of his head. We see the Impala driving furiously back to the Batcave, because obviously we're not going to go to a hospital here, unfortunately. And Sam's trying to, deal with an unconscious Dean, and Dean's out cold, completely out cold, and Castiel won't let Jack use his powers to heal Dean because he's worried that it's going to burn off more or all of Jack's soul. Jack winds up leaving the room, and Dean has something, so does Cass, and Dean winds up having something kind of like a seizure as he's fighting against Michael, who can feel that he's weakening and is still pounding inside Dean's head as Sam's frantically trying to calm him. We cut to Jack's room, and Jack apparently decided to keep the snake Felix. Okay. I don't know why, but it was a beautiful snake. It's a very pretty snake. I wouldn't deny that, but it did belong to a bad guy. So, Castiel comes in and they talk, and Jack he's afraid. He's afraid that, Dean's gonna die, and Jack has to, Jack has to be told some very hard facts by Cass, which, Jack already knew those facts, that humans don't live long, compared to a being like Castiel or even a being like Jack, they don't live for centuries upon eons, in the grand scheme of things, humans' lives are pretty short, and in the lives of hunters, they're even shorter, usually. And that eventually they're gonna die. That it's part of growing up. And especially growing up for Jack, which is something that, he knew that. He'd already lost his mom, so he knew that already, but it's still something that he has to deal with, and he doesn't want to deal with it. He asks Castiel why, what's the point of having all these powers and being what he is if all of the people that he loves are going to wind up leaving him someday. And Castiel's answer is, the point is that they were here at all, and you got to know them. When they're gone, it will hurt, but that hurt will remind you of how much you loved them. And Jack answers, that sounds awful. Castiel concedes, it is, but it's also living. So when Dean wakes up, and he will wake up, we'll just have to remember to appreciate the time that we all have together now. Jack is also still dwelling on the story that Noah told them and what he meant by that. Castiel tells him that basically it's a story about greed. That this snake kept going back to this chicken's nest and stealing eggs from her, went to the same nest all the time and kept taking as many eggs as he could, and that he couldn't leave that one last egg alone, and it wound up killing him. But it's also a story of how you will give up something you love to kill something that you hate. how the chicken was willing to have her last egg be hard-boiled, which would kill the chicken's side, to make sure that the snake would come and eat it and die. And Jack's really thinking about what that story meant and why Noah felt he had to tell it to him. All of a sudden, they can hear a huge commotion in the other room, and they go running. Sam's in with Dean, who is awake. Dean is standing up, flailing around, screaming, "Where is he?" And, Sam's trying to get him to calm down, that he's awake, he's in the bunker, everything's all right. But Dean opens his eyes and says that Michael's gone. And we see the storeroom inside Dean's head where he had Michael trapped, and the door's broken open. Michael is gone. But the thing is, when he says he's gone, Dean doesn't mean Michael's gone, he's taking me over. He means Michael's gone from his body. And all of a sudden there's a scream, and it's Maggie screaming. The guys rush into the main room. All of the other hunters are dead. They're all lying around on the ground with their eyes burnt out. And Maggie goes running to Sam, and all of a sudden she screams, and this bright light comes out of her mouth and her eyes, and she falls to the ground, and she's dead. And there's soft footsteps, and all of a sudden Rowena comes into the room, but it's not Rowena, it's Michael. Michael is possessing Rowena. And we get a commercial as I try to restart my heart. In a flashback, we see Rowena saying yes to Michael when Michael appears in her head, because we saw her studying in another room of the Batcave, and all of a sudden she's outside herself. And Michael tells her that if she says yes to him, he'll let her stay alive. And she doesn't buy him for a second, but he also says that if she doesn't say yes, he'll kill everybody in the Batcave, which he does tell her he knows that she cares about the people there. And she does wind up saying yes. And Michael, also apparently who went to the Victor Von Doom of villain school, because Michael can't Michael can't help himself when it comes to being a sadistic monster. He winds up torturing the Winchesters and Castiel by, he throws them to the ground with his powers, and he makes it so they can't breathe, and then he strikes them with blindness, which is really creepy because we see their eyes are completely all white, which is just horrible, and then just starts using pain, and Sam and Dean and Cass are screaming in agony. Jack calls Michael's name, and Michael throws power at him and winds up, he knocks him down, but Jack gets back up, and Michael doesn't really know how to deal with that because Jack strikes at him with his power. And it's not just a little bit, it's enough that it shakes Michael's grip on the Winchesters and Cass, and it frees them from all of the pain and the blindness and everything else that Michael was putting them through. Michael is, furious and keeps throwing power at Jack, is saying he should have killed him, which Jack's also basically saying feelings mutual. And he keeps throwing power at Jack, and Jack's burning off I don't know how much of his soul, but Jack says that it's worth the cost. When Michael keeps throwing power at Jack, he's telling him, that he's the commander of the host, meaning the holy host, and he's a cleanser of worlds, and that he won't be challenged by a child. And Michael's throwing bolt after bolt after bolt of power at Jack, and Jack keeps coming at him. And he's like, I am not a child. I'm the son of Lucifer. I'm a hunter. And the most important thing Jack could say, I am a Winchester. And he grabs Rowena by the head, and she throws her head back and screams, and Michael's essence flies out of her, and it's like in a swirling pattern above everybody, and Jack uses his power to burn away Michael. He burns away Michael's essence, leaving behind only Michael's grace, which he then takes into his mouth, you know, in this long stream that flows into Jack's mouth, and all of a sudden it's deadly quiet. And Jack says that Michael has died. He's killed him. He says, "I'm me again." And he has this really enigmatic kind of smile on his face, and his wings appear behind him in shadow, and his eyes this golden color that we saw when he was first born. Jack is back up to his full power, and the episode ends. Also, just quick PS, we do see Rowena's alive. We see her moving and looking up at Jack, so we know she's alive. I don't know how well she is, but apparently she's okay. Oh my gosh, this episode kicked so much butt. For those of you who didn't go and look it up, because I had to too, Oroboros is a symbol that you often see in magic. A lot of times you'll see it in alchemy. It's the symbol of a dragon or a snake, usually a snake, but sometimes it's a picture of a dragon, eating its own tail. It was originally a symbol that the Egyptians came up with, the ancient Egyptians, and the Greeks wound up adapting it as well. And it's sometimes used, as I mentioned, it's you see it in alchemy, and it's also oftentimes used as a symbol for infinity, for the concept of infinity. So I think that's really interesting. I thought this episode was just fantastic. I give Oroboros 4 bouquets out of 5. Amazing episode, so incredible, and it really frightened me in more than one place, and it was just knocked out of the park by absolutely everybody involved. I can't say enough good things about this episode or about this season. I think this season has been absolutely amazing so far, and it's just, I mean, does this really mean Michael's really well and truly gone? Because that means that Dean is actually at peace and safe, which is, you know, that's the most important thing, that Dean Winchester is safe from Michael. I mean, that's the most important thing there is, really. I loved it. I loved this episode. It's just fantastic. Next week's episode, Peace of Mind. We know that, Sam and Castiel go to a small town where things almost look like they're straight out of, Pleasantville, or, as Castiel mentions in the teaser we saw, the Saturday Evening Post Norman Rockwell kind of stuff. And we also know that Dean and Jack go to visit an old friend. I don't know what that means. I don't know who that is. I don't want to know. I want to be surprised, so nobody tell me. But I'm definitely looking forward to next week's episode, and I hope you guys are too. Okay, before I head out of here, cats and kittens, I got a couple of plugs to do. I hope you won't mind. If you like this show, please like, share, subscribe, tell other people you know about it. That would be awesome. And if you know anybody, or if you happen to be a fan of kaiju movies, giant monster movies, I hope you'll check out our Patreon. I have a show over there called Kaiju Corner. It's me rambling on about giant monsters. If you join our Patreon, you get to listen to the show, and along with a lot of other cool stuff that my dear, sweet, long-suffering husband TC has put up with. I'm sorry about the squeak through most of the episode. My chair needs some oil, I guess. We've got some other shows that I hope you will go and check out as well, including Ring Around the Rosie, which is my wrestling podcast. TC has some solo shows, including Catastrophe Vortex, which is his disaster movie show. And he has Tuesday Digidex and 3 Minute Weekend, which are his shows where he tells you what's coming out in movies at the theater, on Redbox, on demand, so you know where to spend your money. And we also have Subject Cinema and Front Row 5 and 10, which are 2 shows that we do together, which are really awesome, fun shows. I hope you'll check them out too. And there are other members of our little island of misfit toys, including Eric and Valerie over at Cavebabble, and Anthony Lamberti on YouTube at Aunt B's Nerd Grotto. If you'd like to send me a letter, you can do so at platinumroselle@yahoo.com. Please let me know what you think of the season so far, how well you think it's going. If you would like to follow me on Twitter, you may do so at platinumroselle@twitter.com. And if you'd like to check out some fanfic of mine, you can go to fanfiction.net, go to the author search, and type in Platinum Rose Lady, and you'll find some of my stuff there. I hope if you like it, you'll give it a thumbs up and give it a review. And that is going to do it for another week here on Platinum Rose's Garden. I hope everybody enjoyed their stay this week, and I hope you'll be back next week. So this is Platinum Rose Lady signing off for another week, reminding you to love the ones you hug the ones you love, and take some time to stop and smell the roses. I'll see you around. Bye.
Podcasting's choice. From coast to coast, continent to continent, right here 24/7.